everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autobiology. Today, I am discussing a revolutionary approach to not only brain health, but overall body reparative functions with a focus on your body's proteins. And I'm having this discussion with the principal of Ang3 Corporation, Rowena Gates. Rowena, so lovely to have you on today.
This
Thank
is
you
my
for joining.
pleasure.
Now, Rowena has helped launch a device called the NanoVi, and she has overseen much of the business development side, which includes working with some of the world's top thought leaders on health and fitness. And, I think I know a lot of people probably like to drop the name Tony Robbins, but I am a fangirl of Jim Quick. So like when I just he loves NanoVi. And so I was like, what is this thing that I have to learn about? Um, but but honestly, Rowena, I think that you have been, kind of the face of NanoVi from the beginning. So could you tell us just a little bit about what exactly is it that NanoVi does?
Okay, yeah, NanoVi's a device, first of all, and before that, I'm also a huge fan of Jim Quick. Um, so it's a device, and what you're doing is inhaling the humidified air from the device. And what it's doing is influencing the cellular water in a way that supports the protein activities. And then there's a lot more to it beyond that, but that's sort of the general idea is to improve the environment for proteins to do their work. And then they jump into action. Your body does what it's supposed to do, not what, a pharmaceutical company thinks it ought to be doing.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of supporting the body. It doesn't override anything.
I love how you phrase that. I'm a huge fan of Richard Feynman, the theoretical physicist. And he always talked about how people forget what they already know, right? And sometimes it's just helping people, and in this case, sort of the body, remember or help it along to do what it already does. And Hans Eng, who is the namesake of N3 Corporation, is really the mastermind behind the NanoVi device. And like I said, we're going to talk to him on another podcast. But I think what he did was he took, like you said, like what the body already knows how to do, and helps it do it better.
Exactly. So it was relying on water science, biophysics, to look at what the body's doing, which includes a signaling process where what's a free radical, a reactive oxygen species, which is widely damaging, but it also plays an important role by influencing the cellular water in a way that initiates repair and regeneration. And the way it's doing our initial device was only mimicking the specific wavelength was already known in biology to initiate this process. And so we mimic that wavelength. And then we've done extensive testing on both the device and its impact on people. But with that testing, we could show there are more powerful wavelengths. So you can even sort of up level the humidity you're breathing to be even more powerful in the body. So it has the same influence. It's just that we can do it more effectively. And so that was added to the device, and it basically made it more powerful. So,
Okay.
but other than the roots of it come from mimicking the biology and just augmenting it.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about application that people can relate to. All right, so my you had me at hello moment with you, Rowena, was when you talked about how sitting and working and thinking for 2 hours is like running a marathon. It takes the same physical, amount of energy for the body to do both of those things. And you literally answered a question that my husband and I had been debating because he works outdoors, builds things, right? And there was a period of time he had to do a bunch of office work. And he came to me one day and he said, how do you sit all day and think and concentrate like that? He goes, I'm exhausted. I'm more exhausted than when I'm out building stuff. And we wondered like how much energy does the brain when you're thinking like burn through? So
Yeah.
when you said that, I just found it astonishing. Um,
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about, what happens, both with physical activity and with concentrated thinking?
Mhm. So if we kind of step back to oxidation, if you burn oxygen, you have oxidation as a result. It's like the exhaust from a car engine. As long as you're running, you're going to have that exhaust, unless it's electric these days. And so that oxidation takes place. If you're burning the energy in your brain, it takes place in your brain. If you're burning it in your muscles, then it takes place in the muscles. But the key is for your body to repair that damage on the fly and not let oxidative stress build up in the body. But when you have things like brain fog or decision fatigue, or just a general feeling of exhaustion from focus, those are all indications that your body's not quite keeping up in the repair side of things. And so once the damage outweighs the repair, that's what translates to oxidative stress. And it can be damaging. And so physically, for physical activity or mental activity, or just being exposed to toxins that cause issues as well, it's always that balance between repair and regeneration and the amount of damage done. And so that's always the key. But when you feel unwell or you just can't quite recover and so on, then clearly there's more damage than there is repair. And it's a really good idea to give yourself a break and do restorative things to get back into balance.
So I know a lot of people talk about, aging actually being the process by which damage outpaces repair.
Yeah. And so that's the free radical theory of aging, it's pretty well accepted in many respects. It's not perfect. It's not the be all and end all, but there's no question that that buildup of damage, oxidative stress, is at the heart of aging, and it's implicated in every chronic disease. In every case with these chronic age-related diseases, if you can reduce oxidative damage, you end up reducing inflammation and helping the body come into balance, which are all the factors that are out of sorts for the disease.
Right. And so when we're talking about repair, we're talking very specifically about protein repair. And I actually still have my little guy from the from the conference. But I love how you described this is when your proteins are broken, and they're like not folded exactly the way they need to be, then they're not functioning or not optimally functioning, right? And my kids have played with this so much, it's actually kind of broken. But when you fix them, they kind of like pop back up
Yeah.
and they become functional again. And I found that amazing that you could actually fix these broken and misfolded proteins. I had no idea that we could do that. Um,
Well, it's a huge ongoing process because inside the cell, the proteins are the most abundant component, and they can't count them. They're too small, but they estimate, 5, 8, 10,000 or more in each cell. And cells are really small. And so if you have a free radical in there, it's very likely to damage the protein. It might damage the mitochondria, the DNA, anything else, but is very likely to hit a protein. And so they are kind of a primary subject of damage, but it's also proteins do all the repair. There's no other way to repair damage than protein activity. And so it's really this double-sided thing where you want to keep the proteins working really well to get the repair done. And also, by improving their environment, the watery environment, you can make them more stable so they're not as easy to damage. And we've shown both of those things with studies that show that if you use the NanoVi before you intentionally damage the proteins, they are more resilient and they do much better than the sham device or placebo device where they are actually treated. And then same thing with after damage. And after tends to be more profound, but a lot depends on the type of proteins and the type of damage. And so this study was 3 types of damage: heat, chemicals, and oxidation. And so the oxidation one's super interesting because we all have that all the time because
Right.
we're alive and we breathe oxygen.
Right.
And so, but the others are important too because we're also exposed to other factors. And so that suggests that when you improve the watery environment for the proteins, not only can you help them snap back into functioning, but you can also help them not be as readily damaged by the free radicals.
Okay. So just to summarize, your proteins make up everything, right? I mean, your tissues, they are the basis of all enzymes, for all the chemical reactions that happen in your body, but yet they're also the
Yeah,
the repairmen as well. So, it's almost like the doctor needs a doctor, right?
exactly.
Yeah. And,
And yeah,
and
and the enzymes are catalyzing these reactions. And so enzymes are really key because they have that snowball effect if they
right.
can keep off the positive reaction. And that's why in the study, actually, they studied things like catalase, which is a catalyst and very important in oxidative damage.
Now, you mentioned in your talk that there's over 1 million different proteins in the body, and we've only identified like 50,000 of them.
Yeah, and they don't know the exact numbers. Like scientists might vary on what they think the whole number is, but we know so few of them. I mean, we're talking about naming them, let alone they all interact with each other and do amazing things. And we all those interactions and that will just it's I want to say impossible to sort all that out, but there's so many possibilities. And if a good example of that is the drug interactions or unintended consequence of a drug. And the best example of that is the heart medicine Viagra.
Yes.
And so that's a really good example. It's like, well, who knew? But about 80% of the current pharmaceuticals are protein based. They're based on doing something to block a receptor or replace or whatever. They're all related. Almost all pharmaceuticals are related to trying to do something with the protein activities.
I want to get back to just real briefly the device itself. Now, you mentioned that it is, you know, basically taking water, and what most people probably don't realize, right, is that we've discovered that there are different, phases of water. Well, we knew that, right? So we have solids, gases, and things like that. But what we're talking about is a different phase of water that is almost gel-like, right? Yeah,
That's exactly my understanding. And that's in the last 20 years. Here in Seattle, Jerry Pollack has really advanced the understanding of water science. And the idea that it's measurable, it's repeatable at hundreds of labs all over the world, that there's this 4th phase of water, which is like a gel. And what it really means is that it's structured differently. So the molecules are more closely packed together. It's also described as a lattice or, this gel-like phase. It only occurs on surfaces, and it will be within any water you drink will have some easy exclusion zone water or 4th phase of water. The reason it's called exclusion zone is because when the molecules are packed together, everything else gets pushed out. And so that's why it's excluded, it's pushed out. And so they call it exclusion zone water. But it's in all water. There's some areas of this, but in our cells, what we really want is that layer of exclusion zone water or gel-like layer to form around the surfaces of proteins. And they only form on the surfaces. And so it's essentially a reaction to create this effect through the water is what we're doing. We're delivering the energy over here that will create the easy water on the protein on any surface. But in our case, we care most about proteins.
Okay.
And then the proteins need that energy state in order to fold. And that's how it supports the proteins, because the protein is a chain of amino acids. It's unorganized. It's just lying there, and it has to snap into a 3D structure. And to do that, it needs energy, and so it draws on the water for that energy. And it's that easy water that's highly ordered that transfers the energy through entropy. So it's not heat, or like we tend to think of water as things like heat, but it transfers through energy. So the water becomes less ordered and structured, and the proteins use the energy to become more ordered or to form its three-dimensional shape.
Okay. So the device is taking this water and actually I have the device here. It's right here on my desk.
I love it.
Yes, I love it. And you can see it's water vapor that comes out here, and you can just put it on your mouth, or you can use you can use tubing.
I use the tubing too because I use it while I work.
Yes, I do the same thing. So you're just basically breathing in this water vapor that has gone through this machine that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rowena, it passes through a very specific wavelength of light that structures it the way we need it to be structured, this exclusion zone structure, and that's what we're breathing in.
Yeah, the structure of the water molecule, the droplets that you're breathing in, when they hit your mucous membrane and the cellular water, the energy transfers through them and it creates the order on the surface of the protein.
Okay.
All right. It's not just directly breathing easy water and the protein folds. It actually kind of is like those balls, you drop one here and the other one goes up, and you drop that one. It's kind of like that, where it travels across the cellular water.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the reasons it works throughout the system, because it just travels across.
Just keeps transferring.
Exactly. And so it doesn't matter if you've got inflammation in your foot or in your nose, it's still influential, which seems a little bit weird at first because we're so used to things like being transported through the blood.
Yes.
But it's not working that way. It's working kind of across the water in the system. Right. And the body's mostly water. It's depending on your age, but it's usually 60-70% water, and it's 99% of the molecules in the body are water.
So I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm just curious. So if we use red light therapy, are we potentially making more easy water with the water that's already in our cells?
It's interesting. The red light is different and complementary. It's going to work differently because it's really designed to go through to a certain depth. It's not going to be super deep, it would burn you if it were super deep. And it actually hits directly onto something like the mitochondria or things that it can energize. And so it's really more hitting the components, whereas we're just hitting the water. And the fact that you can see the red light, if you hold up a glass of water, you can see the red light through the water. Our wavelengths you can't see because they're actually absorbed by the water. And so where red light goes through the water, our device is specifically designed to hit the absorption peaks of water. And one of those is the one we're mimicking that's naturally known. It's up around 1,200 nanometers. Red light is much lower number in the spectrum. And that's where we discovered these higher numbers. So we've added wavelengths that are absorption peaks of water that are even more effective. So all we're trying to do is get the thing absorbed by the water. So we don't care if it's identical to the body or not,
Okay.
in that respect. But the red light won't be absorbed, or you wouldn't see it on the other side of a glass of water.
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
And here's just a question. So obviously, our body makes proteins, right? Because that's what DNA does. Then we have DNA, RNA, and RNA makes amino acid chains, and that folds, into proteins. Does NanoVi affect proteins that we ingest, say through our food, or how does it affect?
It doesn't affect them directly, but what happens is when you ingest them, that means you're getting the amino acid building blocks. And so let's say you add collagen or collagen peptides, then you're sure to have those really important building blocks. When they go into the body, they get shredded down to individual amino acids. So they really just become the bricks that are going to be used later. But by eating them, it means they're readily available for your body to then create the proteins it needs. And so let's say for an athlete or a weightlifter, I don't know if you know Ben Pekulski, but he's a wonderful guy, and he does the really heavy bodybuilding and so on. They have a huge need for building muscle and those collagen proteins. And that's the most abundant protein in your body. And so what it means is he would undoubtedly eat more collagen than the rest of us, and therefore he's got all the raw materials he needs for the body to then build the amino acids and the proteins. But everything we eat is completely shredded down to the lowest level of there's 20 amino acids, so it's one of the 20. And 10 of them we have to eat, and 10 of them the body makes on its own. And so the ones we're supposed to eat are called essential amino acids, and that's why diet is so critical to good health.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that, because I think a lot of times people get confused about,
I felt I was in the middle of it going on, and I realized that you know this stuff better than I do, and I
Yeah.
think what I'm talking
No, no,
about.
no, no. But that's why I asked the question, because I think it's important that people, realize that no matter how you get your amino acids, right? It could be ones that you make, and it could be from food that you eat. Uh, and and again, that's why nutrition. And now I think I have a whole new respect for making sure that I drink enough water. Um, just not realizing how essential water is to energy transfer,
Yeah.
within the cells and with the protein. When I have a huge interest in brain health, and that's why I like talking about things that affect the brain a lot. And I don't know how much you know about my background, but I am one of those people that gets their genetic test back, and the doctor's like, oh my god, you're going to start coming down with Alzheimer's at age 40, because you have every risk factor known to man. So I really pay attention to Alzheimer's, neurodegenerative diseases in general. And what's so astounding to me is when we talk about Alzheimer's, they're always talking about this very specific proteins. It's a protein problem, right? And I shared with you yesterday that um, in a more recent study came out showing that it's not necessarily the fact that the plaques are there out of these proteins, but it's a difference in soluble versus insoluble forms of the protein.
So interesting. I loved that article. It explains so much. And I think there were a
Yeah.
lot of people, a lot of researchers are pretty skeptical about that simple, approach of it's like, oh yeah, the plaque fills up and that causes Alzheimer's. Like, no, that's not the cause. Like, it's
No.
interesting.
And just to talk about that a little further, I mean, the fact that what they're saying is that it is the lack of water soluble amyloid beta protein that is causing the problem. It's not the plaque buildup, which is why, like I said, I don't know how much you follow, but There's been over 40 Alzheimer's drugs invented, and all of them have failed.
Hmm.
Every
Hmm.
single one in there because they all focus on getting rid of the plaques. And not only do people not get better, they get worse a lot of the times.
And I mean, that's so scary to sign up for those trials. And it's really interesting because there was that nun study that was done, forever ago, and it showed that these aged nuns, when they looked at their brains, these were women that were completely sharp until they died, and they looked at their brains and they had all the plaques in there. It's just that they'd used their brains in a way that that they didn't see the effects of decline. And it should have been a hint, to say there's something else going on here, because it's not just the cause, obviously.
No, it's not. And I thought that the paper made a really good point. They said it's only too logical if you are detached from the current biases that we've created for too long, which means, oh, we know plaque causes Alzheimer's disease. That the neurodegenerative process is caused by something we lose rather than something that we gain.
That's
And I,
so
yeah,
interesting. For you also, in the last 2 years, they've really made massive advances in artificial intelligence to predict the folded shape of a protein. And the folded shape that determines its function. That's how we know what it does. And so that research then suggests that there are proteins like that they may be able to create synthetically the water soluble version that's needed, and basically make that as some supplemental somehow that is really protective for people with cognitive decline, or who might be susceptible to it. I mean,
right.
it's very, very hopeful.
It is. And I just when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is we've lost the function of a protein, just and that's exactly what NanoVi is trying to do, is trying to get those proteins refolded and back to being functional. And so I'm just curious, has NanoVi been looked at, in terms of, helping preserve, some of
Well,
that function?
not formally, because we are a medical device, and all of that work to have an indication for a disease is just a massive, expensive proposition.
Okay.
And we made the decision not to go that route because it would make it too affordable for people. And it really was, what really excites us is to just help people, not have it be a massively successful commercial endeavor where you get indications for all these different diseases.
Okay.
We very intentionally don't study diseases directly, but we study the things like um, the protein damage, which is associated, or it could be oxidative stress that's associated, or DNA damage, which is associated to other issues. But we don't talk about those other issues, and we obviously don't treat or cure anything. We just really focus on the underlying health of the cell and of a person, and then how that shows up in any individual depends on their specific needs.
Right. Well, I'm telling you that I am doing this so that I do not get Alzheimer's. I'm putting it out there. This is part of my Alzheimer's prevention treatment,
Uh,
because I think it makes sense with what we know, with the current research that's out there, that's showing that it is a loss of a very specific protein function. That it just makes perfect sense, Rowena.
it
Just saying.
does, it does. And what we can show, and I can mention, is, for example, a brain scan, that if you do a brain scan before and after, if somebody's very stressed, like they've had that mental focus, so they may already have some brain fog, and you can see the before and after difference in inappropriate brain activity. And that's very likely reducing oxidative damage and helping the brain stay more fit. And even after one session, you can see the difference in a brain
Wow,
scan.
really?
And so that's the kind of thing that's sort of underlying, well, sure, that affects cognitive decline. I mean, you can feel it because you
Yeah.
can't concentrate anymore or whatever.
Yeah.
And so those are the kinds of things we can talk about. But the actual diseases, oh, those are tricky.
Yeah. Okay, so what's your favorite like NanoVi story? What's your favorite thing to talk about with NanoVi?
Um, what's really fun for me and legal is the athletes, the pro athletes, and of those, my most favorite is the race car drivers because
Oh, yeah, okay.
endurance. I know I'm not that type at all, but I really get going on the racing because endurance race car drivers are the pinnacle of physical and mental endurance. They drive for an hour or sometimes more, and they make a life important decision every 2 seconds or less. And so the concentration is unlike what we normally ever do, and certainly not for prolonged periods of time. And then the physical part of it, even though they're very, sophisticated cars, it's very physical. And so I love that the culmination of both of those things. And they know, what their recovery is like and how they're feeling and everything. And so those guys are especially fun for me. But we have a team that like one of them says, I use it before I race, after I race, when I'm training, like I wouldn't go out there without it.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
let's say you have three different groups of people. So let's say you have like your athletes, then you have your non-athlete, everyday people, like me, and then you have somebody who is currently suffering or recovering from a chronic disease or a bad illness or had to have a lot of surgery, something like that. Like, how would you use NanoVi in those different populations?
So in all of those cases, it's about recovery. And we do have a lot of use. I mentioned the pro athletes, but they use it for performance because it makes a difference in performance as well. But really, it's about recovery and that the body does the repair. And so it doesn't matter. Like I had a group out of Mexico City, and it's a big center, that's adopted NanoVi, and they wanted different protocols for all these different things, which makes sense in health. But it's not really a different protocol for NanoVi because they need to use it to support everything else they're doing and support this process. And it's not as if you use it 10 minutes before and 3 minutes after or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so for somebody who's chronically ill or somebody that's injured or somebody that's well and just wants to stay well, the biggest difference is how much time they should use it.
Okay.
And if somebody's already really challenged and ill, they should use it a lot more than somebody that's using it for wellness and they're just trying to maintain because they're trying to catch up. They are digging out of a hole at that point. And we have a lot of experience with that. The first part of our existence was all chronic illnesses. It was always doctors, integrative physicians usually that would use it for their chronically ill patients. And then we really switched over because it's very hard to be in that world without medical claims basically.
Right.
And so we still have a lot of people that are challenged, but we do more with healthy aging and performance now.
I know it's you always I know when you talk about it, you say, you can use it for, 15 minutes at a time and you'll get benefits. Um, I definitely use it for at least an hour every day.
Me too.
Yeah. And now my kids, it's funny. My son, he's 13. He's like one and done. My daughter could she thinks it's extremely relaxing. She loves the way the vapor feels in her nose, and she could sit there all day like
Huh?
with it on. Um,
Well, 13-year-olds are notoriously hard to get to sleep and to get to wake up. That's just an age where they're, and it can be really helpful to use before bed. I didn't even really know that. And a couple of our people that use it, I don't know if you know Kyla Barnes, but she works on brain health. She said to me, "Oh no, I use it every night before sleep and then I sleep better." And meanwhile, I used it every day during the day and I was challenged with sleep. And sure enough, I used it at night and it really helped me sleep. So now I do a session before I go to bed, just,
Yeah.
20 minutes, half an hour. And
Have
so
you,
for a 13-year-old, that might help him.
yeah.
Yeah, shift out of the sympathetic system into parasympathetic, which is another thing we measure and we can demonstrate. That it just helps the body kind of recenter itself.
Well, I'm gonna do that. He has a hard time like shutting down. So
Oh yeah, they all do though. It's not
yeah.
it's not just him.
Have you looked at any differences in NanoVi with kids versus adults or yeah.
Um, we really haven't. We've had it used by newborns even.
Oh,
Um, and so it kind of goes the whole spectrum it's been used for. We've had a lot with at one time especially we had a lot with autistic kids. Autistic kids are all different. They're not, they're not all the same. And so it's one of those things that you have to see what works for your child. And
mhm.
if it's not an issue with oxidative damage, a child should be healthy enough they don't need a NanoVi device when they're, little. It's only when they get, if they're stressed or overdone, which we tend to do that to kids. They're playing sports and all this stuff.
Yes.
And so then it helps them, but they usually don't need to use it a long time to get a benefit from it.
You mentioned earlier, we talked earlier about red light therapy. And, what's really cool about NanoVi, I think, is that you can stack a lot of things easily with it.
I do that all the time.
I mean, what are some of your favorite stacks with
Well, I
NanoVi?
use it with my red light. And I
Okay.
mean, I have to admit it, but I use it while I meditate with my red light. And because you can get, more stuff done. And then I use it with compression boots.
Okay.
And I don't have a big PEMF. I only have the little PEMFs. And so there would be times when I used them at the same time. And let's see, I think those are the main ones I do. I don't think there's other devices that I typically use it with. Oh, I use it with Brain Tap all the time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
I love
I
Brain
just got one of those. So
love Brain Tap.
yeah.
But it's really complimentary. And Patrick Porter once said to me, they should have NanoVi in every center that has Brain Tap. And I'm like, yeah, they should, but they don't.
Yeah, they should. I was just thinking, Rowena, I was thinking the same thing because I go to a place here in Pittsburgh called Restore. It's like a wellness center.
Mhm.
And I have a membership there and I like to go get monthly infusions of, vitamin C, what have you. Because I get so tired of taking so many supplements. So I just want to go there once a month and get them all infused. And I'm thinking, gosh, it would be so great if like they had a NanoVi. You could just do the vapor while
Yeah.
you're getting your infusion. I mean, you could pair it with so many other things, because they have, it's to me, this just goes right along with all the other things that they have
Mhm.
there. The cryotherapy, they have the hyperbaric chambers. In fact, I think you talked with Bella about the
Yeah,
hyperbaric.
we keep dying. Then she went to Germany, but no, they're absolutely complementary. A lot of cryocenters and a lot of hyperbarics have them. They increase the benefits of those two modalities. One floods your body with oxygen, then ours helps with utilization and with oxidative damage, which has to occur. And with cryo, they're stirring up cold shock proteins and heat shock proteins. And if you're going to stir them up with cryo, why not make them work better with NanoVi? I mean, it's a perfect complement.
It really is.
And the other one, you mentioned the drips, but we have a lot of use with NAD drips because they tolerate the drip better. They,
Really?
yeah. They don't feel as unwell during the drip. And then with vitamins. And then the other one we see quite a lot is neurofeedback. Like at 40 years of Zen, they have 4 or something.
Oh, wow.
Because at 40 years of Zen, they can measure, they do CAP training where you're really pushing your brain. Some of us find it the most challenging part of 40 years of Zen. and and they get a noticeable bump in what a person can do if they're using a NanoVi while they do the CAP training versus not using the NanoVi. And so
Okay.
they always do it during CAP training because they can get people to a higher level.
And for those of you who don't know what 40 Years of Zen is, um, it's a program that you can go through it's by Dave Asprey. He created it. But it's a whole like biofeedback interventional program. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it, but I have not been through it, but all of my friends who have been through it said it is literally transformational. Like you just
Yeah. Yeah.
can't describe it.
It's really something. You spend a week there and they have really good food, which is not the only reason I went, but it's really put together, so there's all these different aspects of brain health and emotional health and so on that you can really upgrade yourself. And it's called 40 Years of Zen because you're meant to come out being much more calm and Zen-like at the end.
Yes,
It's
yes.
just good for any of us, really. Almost everybody has got a fair share of stress in their life, whether they
Yeah,
know
no.
it or not.
I know. My friend Dr. Jen Haley, I've had her on the program a couple times. She went during COVID because everything got canceled and it was like right at the beginning, so they were still open. And and she got to go and she was just like, the support from other people that you feel when you go there, it's just like it's like you just walked into like the best family gathering that you could have ever imagined.
Yeah, it's really, really, it's a special experience. It really is. And it's, depending on where a person starts, I think it can be really up leveling. And the reason they really got going on NanoVi was because 2 of their clients that had gone back 4 times used it and they were setting new records for brain endurance for, how far they could push their brains because these guys are way out there on
Yeah.
brain. And so then 40 years like this is like, yeah, we really should have this.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're pretty exceptional guys that what's possible. It's like your body, a highly trained athlete is the same thing. They have highly trained brains.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like you said, I could see NanoVi being, part of everybody's health and wellness center. I mean, it just complements so many things, and it's so
You
easy.
talk to those people
So
at the
easy.
store, it definitely is a fit.
Yes.
Actually, and just so you know, if anybody out there has, ideas, my goal is to get this into places like that or gyms where many people can share one device because we use it all the time, and that's really wonderful if people can have their own. It's by far the best way to go, but financially, that's not realistic for everybody, and we really are very keen to make it more available to people. And corporations, there's another place. Like, why not have 20 people a day can use it at a company, and then it's much more accessible and helps so many more people if you could get it into these more public settings, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
So that is one of the things that's kind of on my to-do list. I'd really like to move that ahead.
Well, that was actually going to be one of my closing questions is how do you really see NanoVi evolving, the
Yeah.
use? So,
Well, that is it. It is already designed with the smart card technology, so somebody could literally buy a card, and then go and use the device, and it deducts the minutes from the device, from the card. And so that is a big one to me, and that makes it accessible in other parts of the world that aren't as, economically well off as we are. So that is an interest. The technology itself will not change in any dramatic way. And you mentioned Hans Eng at the beginning, and I really want to shout out to him. He really is the mastermind behind it and all that heavy lifting. And that's we've done a huge amount of testing and research on it, which is not always the case when you when you see things that are being sold for health and well-being. And that part is pretty solid. And the technology, there's not some low-hanging fruit that we could change it in a way that made it even better. So it's kind of set the way it is, which means our agenda now is to get it out and get people so they can use it and it can help people ideally as broadly as possible.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it is it's an investment in your health. I mean, if you're somebody that's thinking about purchasing one for home use, like I have, it's an investment. And the only thing I can say is, I don't buy a new car every other year. I don't buy shoes or handbags or anything anymore. I save my money up and I buy biohacking devices. That's what I do. I've had the same car for, I've actually bought one car in my adult life. I've had the same car for 9 years, the last 9 years now. And I think it just depends on what your priorities are, in terms of, um, health. But with that being said, hopefully, we can make this device, like you said, more available in public areas. And, when I got it, I saw that you had it. I didn't realize it was all set up for multiple users with, with the card slot and everything. I mean, that is
Yeah,
very forward thinking.
yeah, it's well, that's Hans again. I can't take any credit, but
Yes.
yeah, it is, and it would be really nice to go in that direction. That would be very helpful to a lot of people. It can be very beneficial to people with chronic illness, for example. And there's always some of them in an office at work, and um, it could be a really smart investment for a company to put that in. In fact, Dave Asprey just released his last blog post, unless it's been replaced today, was on corporate wellness and how to take care of employees with devices that are, basically easy to use at work. You don't have to get undressed or sweat.
Yes, exactly. What? I think I did read that. I think I read it a couple days ago. Yeah, he was talking about how easy it would be just to put this in a room like they have like for like breastfeeding moms. Like you have like
Yeah.
a
I mean,
wellness room.
yeah, it's so easy, and you don't need a huge gym, and you don't have sort of,
Right.
or no, yeah, it's very possible, and I hope that companies will move in that direction as they really want to retain their best employees and they want to attract really good employees, and they really start, investing in their staff, which is how it should be, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Uh yeah, that's something that I never really thought about. Oh, just I work from home, so I don't ever think about things in terms of what you can do on a corporate level. But yeah, that would be so easy, Rowena. That would be
I
so
know. And I tried to nudge, like NanoVi's featured obviously in that article. And I tried to like, hey, we could discuss this. It's sort of my passion,
yes.
but there's no interest. I didn't get any callback.
Oh man. Well,
But I think it's where we need to go. I think we need to start looking at community health and corporate wellness and things that really are inclusive. And you have to start out exclusive, right? The first Teslas were those little tiny sports cars that cost a fortune.
yes.
That's how you get going. But after a time, you want it to be available to everybody and inclusive. And so I think community wellness, corporate wellness, all those things are really important. And we need to start thinking that way, especially the people that can afford their own need to start, looking at that.
Yeah, it's I was just reminded, Rowena, I think it was like 2 years ago, I was asked to create a workshop for a company where I taught them basically how memory works. But their big ask was, how can we keep our memory up? Because they were an older sales force, and I'm just thinking, at the time I was actually just sort of parroting a lot of what Jim Quick talks about,
I did
to be
that
honest
too.
with you. Yeah, yeah. I'm just like, I felt like every 5 minutes I was saying, and if you want to learn more about this, you can take Jim's Quick's course, you can read his book, blah, blah, blah. But this would be a great solution, to those people who wisely keep an aging population around because they have the wisdom of years, uh, and but yet supporting them.
Oh, it would. There's things like this, and there are other possibilities too that just are tremendously helpful to anybody, especially as they get older. But yeah, that could make a huge difference. I mean, you can, for people that are kind of low energy, they can notice that difference.
Hmm.
Whereas your son probably is never going to notice an energy difference, right?
Right.
But as people get older, they're kind of, things are a little slower. And so that's keeping an employee productive. I mean, there's a bottom line that makes sense in that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. Well, Rowena, if people want to learn more about NanoVi, what should they do?
The easiest thing is eng3corp.com, which is ENG and then the number three, ENG3CORP.com, eng3corp.com. There's information there. And then reach out to us because most of our information isn't published at the website. And so if there's a specific condition or challenge that somebody's interested in, if they just phone, we might have some insight on that. And then after that, there's just a lot of the podcasts. We can point you to them too, but Jim Quick's done one, Dave Asprey, Luke Story, Ben Greenfield, Ben Mikulski, Kyla Barnes. There's a lot of podcasts out there too, and podcasts can be a great source of information. The one with Dave Asprey was done quite a long time ago now, but it goes quite a lot into depth on the technology because Hans and Dave get, pretty nerdy on it. And so that's a great one if somebody's interested in the actual technology. And then Jim's is related to brain health and so on. And so there's quite a lot of those, which I think are a nice way to learn.
Yeah, your website has a ton of information on it. So I didn't realize that you had other stuff you could send. I know I'm signed up for your emails and newsletters, and you guys do a really good job of sharing clinical study information, through your emails and newsletters.
Right. And that's another thing. If you do sign up at our site, we don't spam you. You get stuff like study results. And I'm just thinking, we have an ebook that's related to cognitive function that you might be interested in, my dear. But we
Oh,
can
okay.
talk about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Rowena. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's such a treat to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.